of a different podcast episode, but you would all remember Tracey from before, and if not, she can introduce herself in a moment. We're just gonna have a bit of a chat and see how it goes. So, Tracey, welcome back to the Body Love Binge.
Thank you so much, Victoria. It's so great to be here.
Yeah, and so Tracey, we did an episode. When was it? How long ago was it now?
Well, now it was about 14 months ago.
Wow, time just flies.
It sure does. Yes.
And it was a well received episode. So if you haven't listened to that one, then go and check it out. Just type in Tracy's name in my podcast search and it will come up. And then Tracey reached out asking if we could have a convo about what we've both been up to and share a lot of value and wisdom for our listeners, because Tracey's also going to share on her network. So that's what we're doing. And I might be eating an orange I'm really hungry and I didn't have enough time to have a snack. So I'm just going to roll with it. So if everyone's okay with that, it might be a bit distracting, but
I'm totally okay with it because it just plays so well into the first bit of our conversation, which won't allow you, I don't think, much time to eat. But I was really wanting to talk to you because the biggest change between last year and this
Mhm.
year is that you are now a mom.
I am.
So I am so interested just in that experience for you in general, of course. But then for my listeners who maybe don't know or don't remember, you are a eating disorder specialist coach, and that is Body Love Binge is all about self-acceptance and how we heal
Mhm.
and all of that. So after kind of the general hello, this is what motherhood is like, which is like a topic in and of itself, I really want to dig into your experiences. Now, obviously, your daughter is, quite young,
Yeah.
but I'm curious to know as a specialist, because people ask me this all the time. And to be honest,
Mhm.
all this time later, I don't have great answers about what should mothers of young children and older children be doing differently regarding food and body image and all those
Mm,
things than our mothers did with us. So,
yes.
first and foremost, tell us about your beginning mothering experiences because I'm just so happy for you.
Thank you. I'm really glad we're having this conversation also for myself because it will allow me to kind of work things out in my head, reflect. So I'm grateful for this space. And we can, even though she is so young, we can absolutely go into, how approaching her relationship with food. That's actually already quite different from a lot of opinions that we're getting. So we'll go into that. But the first thing I want to share is before I had Koa, my daughter's called Koa, as you know. I laughed so hard at this. I was saying to my one-to-one clients who were already mothers were saying, how is your business going to change? And I'm like, well, it's not going to change much because nothing much will change because, I'll just have my daughter and when she's asleep, I'll do the calls and then, oh my God, I'm laughing so hard.
Surprise!
Oh my God, everything changes. And it's been a blessing because, oh boy, has it shown me areas of my life where I thought I had surrendered and let go, and I wasn't. Or maybe it was just, triggering. We had like, there's a routine, which is also a joke because there isn't really a routine because she sleeps on demand, feeds on demand, does what she wants on demand. We're not training her because that just doesn't feel right. She just is very intuitive. So one week, as you know, Tracey, you'll be like, oh, yes, we have this routine. This is when she sleeps. And then the next day, everything is completely different. And we're like, this is hilarious. So surrender has been my biggest lesson again, still is. Do you have any questions around that before I go into like how we're bringing food into her life?
I really do because I think as often as that phrase, and myself included, uses it because it is absolutely fundamental to my healing journey as well. I
Yeah.
still think people struggle to understand exactly what that means. And I get it because surrender sounds so much like giving up. I mean, we think about it in that term,
Yeah.
but it's not that. So, from your perspective, can you give us a little more about what that means? I mean, as you've said, it's about letting her take the lead. It's what she
Mm,
needs and on her schedule and all of that. But I'm talking about more the internal inside you. What happens, I guess, when you aren't feeling surrendered and what are you seeing there emerge? Because I think that's what people misunderstand is
yeah.
what's going on the inside.
Oh, these are great questions, Tracy. Very deep, juicy questions. You're right. It's an internal experience. So I know when I'm not in surrender, when I feel physically in my body like tense. I feel a little anxious. It's like an alarm bell. I'm like, oh, cool. This is like ding, ding, ding. You're feeling anxious. Your thoughts are racing. This is a big word. I'm trying to be all controlly with other things, like even with my husband, like let's say he changes her nappy and I notice myself being like, did you do this thing? And like, you know how I like it done. And I'm like, oh, there we go again. Miss Control Freak pops out. So for me, I'm not surrendering when I notice I'm being controlly and with other people, especially stressy energy and resisting what is because I want it this way because in quotes, I know best. So therefore, if this happened, then it would just be better. And when it doesn't go that way, again, these are like alarm bells that I now see as a positive. And I'm like, oh, thank you. Let me just, and in my opinion, I surrender by first of all choosing to accept. So for me, I have like a little step by step process. Number one, I see that I'm resisting reality right now and it's stressing me. Not good for anybody, especially my daughter. So the second thing I do is mentally choose to accept. So I might say out loud, you know what? It is what it is. I might bring humor into it because I love humor and I like to heal with humor. And then the embodiment of that acceptance in the mind is like you know what? I'm just going to let go. I'm going to stop fighting. I'm going to practice loving what is, not tolerating what is, but loving and going with the flow and actually seeing this as the most positive thing that's happening. But that's all internal work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love that so much because I think, especially for those of us of a certain generation, our parents just didn't know about this and they didn't parent
Mm.
us that way.
No.
So they didn't understand that, and I was going to touch on this later, but it's just part of what we're talking about now as well, which is they didn't really understand that their own internal discomfort leaks out onto and into the environment and into the children.
Yeah.
And so for my community knows for just one example that I was supposed to have a baby sister and she died at childbirth.
Mm.
So this was never, ever, 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 ever discussed. So back in the day, it's like if we pretend it didn't happen, everybody's just going to move on and be fine. And that is so now that's kind of a dramatic example, but
Mm.
that is, the well into which I mean, I was born first, but I was only like 2. So the mourning and the grief and the not dealing with and all the things has
Mm.
no choice but to impact the environment no matter how hard we're trying to pretend like it isn't.
Yeah. And I think going, if you could be a fly on the wall, so to say, and go back as your adult self and like look at how all that happened with your parents, what would you invite them to do differently, even though I knew that they were doing the best with, what they knew?
Exactly, exactly. And I'm so glad you said that. I mean, for sure, I would invite them to please get professional help
Mm.
because I
Mm.
think when something that traumatic and dramatic happens, there are people who do this for a living who can help you navigate grief and pain and suffering. You don't have to do it on your own.
Yeah.
And that was a resource that I'm glad to say when my own daughter, became ill at 13, I didn't hesitate to take advantage of because I
Mm.
knew I couldn't handle it. So, first and foremost, I would wish that they would get professional help in whatever way they felt was right for them, but then start to have a dialogue, an honest and open dialogue,
Mm.
which they would have needed help with as a very young child. Obviously, I couldn't have a cogent conversation like we're sitting
Yeah.
here having today, but there are
Yeah.
people who like understand this kind of thing. And so dealing with the very real things that were happening rather than pretending like they weren't happening
Mm.
is healthier behavior. And I think we all would have had a healthier, happier existence if they had been able to do that work.
Yeah, because they pretend it never happened, but it absolutely happened. And did you ever remember? I mean, two's very young. I don't have many memories from that age, but did you ever remember maybe your mum getting upset? And then if you asked if she was upset, did she say, "Oh no, I'm fine," and she clearly wasn't fine?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
this lasted for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And I think over time, I mean, yeah, you're right. I have very few memories of that young of an age.
Mm,
But this dynamic between them lasted for years and years. And they did eventually divorce when I was in college.
mm,
Well, college age to two is a lot of years to
yeah.
be living in this dynamic where people are trying to pretend like they're
Mhm,
fine and they just aren't. And
yeah.
so it becomes very confusing. And then also into my environment, add the mixture of food. You know, for one parent, it was let's go anything anything she wants. Um,
Oh, Tracy has
y-
stopped being recorded because of low browser storage. Oh, this is not helpful. Oh,
oh my God.
talking about surrender and then just look what happened.
Yeah, that's for sure. So hopefully it won't be so obvious for those watching or listening, but we just
Mm,
had a major technical snafu, but we seem to have figured that out. So here we go. So we
yes.
were talking about surrender. And yes, so the idea that my parents, we were talking about specifically, but this is, of course, valid for any family system. It's not, one
Mm,
in which only a child has died, but when parents are living a different reality inside themselves than what they are exhibiting or what they are exuding or what is actually happening like in the setting. So my baby sister died and my parents were like denying reality because it's like this was never talked about. They were both grieving. There was so much pain and all of that. And that remained true for many, many, many years because they never dealt with it. So there's a disavowal, in other words, of like the children's reality because our kids are smart and they
yeah.
sense, they have feelings, and they know something is awry. And when you are telling them that's not true or everything
Mm,
is fine or whatever, that creates an internal conflict inside of them that they don't have the wherewithal to understand or to address. And so that
yes.
causes all kinds of later in life, it did in my case unhealthy patterns around that dynamic because it's just so confusing as a child. You don't know what's happening when your reality is kind of constantly being reflected back to you as not what you are actually experiencing. And
Yeah.
then also in my case, you had the layer of food with one parent using it as a, always wanting whatever you want, da da da, let's go for a treat was because of who knows why, right? That's just how he wanted to do it. And then a mom who's like constantly criticizing my
Mm,
size and my shape and what I ate and whatever ended up, creating a lifelong unhealthy situation or dynamic with my own body that I'm still to this day, I'm 57 years old, still to this day, trying to work on. And then for anyone who doesn't know, of course, my daughter knows that I share about this and it's the content primarily of my book. She was then diagnosed with an eating disorder when she was 13. And that's what I share in my book, our journey for that kind of first couple of years of what we went through trying to get her some help, which
mm,
ultimately meant really my husband and I getting help because the only
yeah.
people we could control was ourselves. And so that's kind of the short version of where we left off and talking about surrender, which I think is such an important topic because yes, I wouldn't have if you had asked me then, was I trying to control my daughter at first
Mm,
when she was diagnosed, I would have looked at you like you were nuts. Like, what are you
mm,
talking about? I want her to eat because I want her to stay alive. I want her to be healthy. I want all these things. So it can be really hard to identify those dynamics, especially when they're things that are ingrained in you from a very, very, very young age.
yeah. And especially when I assume you think you're doing the best. Like with me, so very lightheartedly with a schedule, and with you, so more deeper with your daughter and anorexia, we just want to do our best. But actually, if we started off leading into this topic from surrender, because you were saying that, and my internal state of stressy and controlly will be affecting my daughter. So surrender is the answer.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. Which is why it's so dang important. Yes. So, well, before we move into the inner work is the outer work, I do just want to say, because one of the things that happened in the last year in my life is that I was very honored and grateful earlier this year for my book to receive an award. So, it
Oh,
was nominated for an Independent Book Publisher Association Award in Parenting and Family. And it won not the gold, but the silver, which is okay by me. I was just happy to be there. But I have to say, as someone who it took over a decade of writing and rewriting. And what I didn't realize until I was close to the end of the writing process for this book is that what I was actually doing was the work of healing. I
yeah,
thought for a long time I was just a crappy writer. Like, and I just didn't know what I was doing. And, I certainly am not a writer by trade. So I did have to learn craft and I needed to learn what makes a compelling story because I wanted to
mm,
do right by my family. They were so gracious to allow me to put because it's not it's our story out into the world because we know so many people are going through now what we went through
yeah,
then, and we
mm,
wanted to have a hopeful dialogue for folks. It takes a while to get there, but the actual work and what was taking me so long was that I was healing complex relational trauma, and I had no idea actually that that's what was going on.
yeah.
So,
Well,
and
congratulations. I want to add that in. Congratulations in person as much as we can be. And
yes.
what's your book called and where can people find it? Because that's important.
Yes, thank you. It's called Bloodlines, a memoir of harm and healing, and it's available everywhere books are sold. So wherever someone's favorite place to buy a book is, they should be able to find it there. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, it was, and one of the things that reasons I wanted to revisit this with you is because when we first talked, I was still only grappling with understanding that I had complex relational trauma. Like that was still totally so new in my vocabulary and my real life. And what did
Yeah.
that mean and everything around it? So it seemed like such a wonderful opportunity to come back and revisit all of these things that we kind of talked about then and are going to talk about now in a slightly different way. Because when we talk about, the inner work is the outer work, this is some of exactly what you're saying. So you just
Yeah.
beautifully express that with surrender. From my perspective, it's healing complex PTSD. And what that means is that there are patterns I learned very, very young, as we were saying. I didn't know I was learning them, but because
Yeah.
of the dynamic that was going on in my family, and it wasn't only the death of my baby sister, there were other things involved. And just because these things exist doesn't mean, I should be clear, that someone's automatically going to receive a diagnosis. That's not how these things work. But
Yeah.
but I do have one, and it's been life changing for me to understand that there's a reason why I think the way I think, feel the way I feel, do the
Mm.
things I do, and all of that, which I used to think was just because there was something wrong with me. And
Mm.
now I understand there's something wrong with me, but not in the way that I thought. And
Yeah.
so that inner work of whatever it is for each individual, which, as we're saying, a large part of that is identifying the discomfort that we feel. Because those of us, again, of a certain generation, I think younger generations are just better at this because there's more dialogue around it.
Yeah.
We don't know what to do with ourselves when we
Yes.
feel that way. And so we offload those emotions or that angst or that anxiety or that all of that stuff that's going on into our environment because we don't know otherwise. And so what
Yes.
you're saying is the critical nature of no matter how old your child is. My child is going to be 27. It's still important for me to do this work
Yeah.
inside myself because I want to have a healthy relationship with her. So it doesn't matter what age your child is.
No, because as much healing as we do, we still see our parents as our parents. And although, we have to go through, I did have to go through the heartbreaking realization that our parents are human and they messed up and they're imperfect. And, that was heartbreaking to me because you see your parents as God when you're growing up, which is why dysfunctional families create dysfunctional people like you and I who are, healing and doing the work. We still look up to our parents in a way. And even though I've done a lot of work, there's still a part of me, a little girl inside of me that just wants my mum's love and approval. And so if you're modeling to your now older daughter healing and boundaries and self-love, then no matter how old she is or whether she lives with you or not, that will have an effect on her.
Exactly. Right. And
Yeah.
gosh, that's just so important. So I don't want to move on without circling back around because we had talked initially that we would dive into in as much as you want about how you want to handle food in particular
Yes.
differently. I mean, I still see all the time. I think this is an issue that isn't going to go away anytime soon. Like memes will go by in my feed or whatever of like moms wondering, adult children or young children, how do I talk to my daughter about body image or weight or food or whatever? And
Yes.
people still ask me that all the time, and I don't have any good, easy answers. Maybe it's easier than I think, and I'm very curious to know what you're going to say about how we should be relating with ourselves and our daughters in particular, but of course, sons
Yeah.
as well, about
Yeah.
their body and food and, size and shape, because, as a culture, we are so misguided in terms of, the importance of the size of our body.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for my daughter to get older so I can have these conversations with her. But speaking to all parents with different children, different ages of children, number one is modeling the behavior yourself, like you're doing that we've talked about. Like, for example, if someone's body checking and they don't think their daughter or son's noticing, they're noticing. So is a difference between looking at yourself in the mirror, getting dressed, checking yourself and then off you go, than body checking and looking at different angles. They're going to notice that. So model what you're doing is more important than what you're saying, always. And this goes the same with food. So, in fact, my daughter, the way we want to raise her with food, and I'll go into that in a moment, is actually encourage me, not today, but to sit down and have more snacks because interestingly, she won't eat unless she sees me eating, which is really cool. And so to encourage her to try different foods and different variety and eat more regularly because she needs it because she's growing, she's on milk and breast milk still. But I'm eating more regularly because then she's like, oh, I mean, she's probably not thinking this dialogue. She doesn't know like language yet, but mummy's modeling this to me. It's safe, it's fun. Let me also do it. So how we're raising her, and she's just 11 months now. And again, what I'm going to say isn't, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying anyone else is wrong. I want to reiterate that point. I'm just doing what feels right to me. And a lot of people are giving loving suggestions that just don't feel right to us. So we have chosen not to feed her mushed up food. Like, even though it's home cooked, we're not mushing it all up together because we want her to see a carrot is a piece of carrot and a broccoli is a piece of broccoli and a potato and etc. So it might take her, obviously we're making it soft for her so it's easy for her to eat, but we want her to see that these are the whole foods that you're eating. Otherwise, this big mush, she doesn't really know what it is. So it's taking a little bit longer to like wean her off the milk and only have food, and that's okay for us. She still wakes up in the night, and people say, if you get more food down her, you'll get more sleep, and that's probably the case. But she literally drinks milk when she wants to, on the breast and on the bottle. She eats when we eat, but she just kind of experiments. She holds it. We don't feed her with a spoon. If we have rice and stuff, she has it on her bowl thing, and she just scoops it with her hands and throws it at the wall and puts it in her hair and all sorts of things. So we really want her to explore for herself like the different textures and things of food. What we've not done as well, and again, we don't use the spoon, but when we did start off with yogurt, because yogurt you can't really, that's just impossible to like her to scoop off. So sometimes we'd use a spoon with yogurt. We're not doing the whole here it comes airplane meow, like, because for me that's encouraging her. If she's saying no, I don't want any more, and we're trying to encourage her with airplane noises and make it fun, what I think I'm teaching her is your body's told you no, but actually you still need to eat a bit more, and let's make it fun to try and force you to eat a bit more. So that doesn't sit right with me. So we want food to be really neutral. Food is an exciting part of life, and I love food and I think it's very pleasurable. So it's not like we're not going to be excited for, Christmas food and food that comes with the seasons and things like that, but we want food just to be a neutral part of life. So those are the things that we've been doing differently, which I notice a lot of people do differently. And again, there's no right or wrong. But that's how we're doing it so far. And when she gets older, we're just going to, with the language, like food is neutral. We're not going to use the word treat, because I think dogs have treats. A treat is like, oh, let me treat myself to like a massage, like a special thing that's not an everyday thing. Whereas chocolate and sweets and things like that, if she sees it, because I had this experience, if she sees it as a treat, it's on a pedestal. Where she sees it as that you get to have this in as part of like all other things like vegetables and potatoes and cheese, then it just becomes chocolate also. So I'll stop
Yeah.
there in case you have
Yeah.
any input you want to share.
No, I really appreciate that because all of this dialogue is just so foreign to me anyway, and
Mm,
important. I mean, again, even if our kids aren't young, our relationship, like you're saying, that we're modeling not only with our mental health, but with our physical health is so important, not only for our kids, but for ourselves. And it's like, I
yeah,
know it comes up. I'm seeing a nutritionist now, and she will ask me often. She's sort of from a purview of like intuitive eating,
yeah,
which, there's a lot around that, whatever. So, like you're saying, people have to do what's right for them. But she asks me all the time, like, do you have foods that you identify as like good and bad? In other words, is there like a moral, construct that you're putting around food? And as much as I would
yeah.
like that to be not true, it is true. And
Mm,
exactly like you're saying, I mean, my dad was always taking me out for treats, and it was always food. And so the way I learned to kind of cope with
yeah,
life was with food. And so there's good food and there's bad food. The bad food is the kind of food that he would take me out for treats.
which
So,
is interesting, because I need to interrupt here and add
yeah,
something that I'm certain when he was taking you out for treats, you were also receiving connection and bonding. So you're also linking quote unquote bad food from your mum, I assume, labeling it that, and society and all that, with a pleasurable, happy, joyful experience of connecting with a relationship. So that's very
exactly.
confusing. I bet you were so confused as a child with everything that went on with you.
Exactly, exactly. And, that dynamic doesn't change as we get older. It's
No.
just we're doing it in different environments now. Like we move out of
Hmm.
our, family home or whatever. Well, that relationship with food still exists. That's so
Yeah.
confusing and unhealthy. The relationship with food is unhealthy because that's sort of what I learned. And
Yeah.
so that's still work at 57 years old. I'm working to unlearn and
Mm.
how to trust my body, how to have a relationship where a food is food. Like you're saying, it's
Yes.
wonderful, it's delicious, but it's not, I'm working to not use it as my coping mechanism. I mean, it's
Yeah.
no secret that when my daughter got sick, I had no coping mechanisms except for food and alcohol. So I drank a
Mhm.
lot and I ate a lot and I gained 40 pounds and I was already overweight. And so that then exacerbated an unhealthy dynamic I had with my body already. And then it's
Yeah.
getting more out of control as my daughter is getting out of control. And the whole situation was just a big stinking mess, which
Yeah.
it's not like that anymore. I mean, we're still works in progress because that never ends, right? I mean, we're still learning and growing and doing all of these things. But yes, it was very confusing. And so when you have that relationship where you think, that food is what is bringing you comfort because that's what a small mind makes of it because I have this amazing connection with my dad and we always
Yeah.
go here and we do that and he takes me there for this treat and there for that treat, whatever. And yes, so then the thing that you feel comfort in, your mind associates with the food as much as with the connection. And in fact, then when you get older, and if you, end up having a complex PTSD diagnosis or just trouble maintaining relationships, which was the
Yeah.
reality of my life, then the thing that takes the place of healthy relationship in that way is the food.
It's food. And that's not a bad thing. The coping mechanism we choose is better than, in my opinion, drugs, which is more harmful. So when we make the coping mechanism bad or shameful, especially with food, we eat even more of it because we feel bad and shameful, and it perpetuates the cycle. And so going back to food being emotional, I think food is emotional, even though it can be neutral, because I'm thinking of my daughter. When she wants comfort, she goes on the breast. Milk comes out the breast. So she goes to sleep on the breast for now. And then when she's asleep, I leave her and off I go. But comfort is connected with milk, which is sweet, which is love, which is bonding. So I think it's okay that food is emotional. And I've noticed through myself and through my clients that come to me, with emotional eating or binge eating, when we allow, I know it sounds completely ridiculous and crazy, when we actually allow the coping mechanism to be food and add other things in. So when I noticed that my coping mechanism was 2 tubs of Ben and Jerry's, like 5 big bars of chocolate and a movie, and no one can interrupt me and come into my space, I would then be like, well, let me go for a bath and take a tub of Ben and Jerry's with me in the bath. So I started to add in other ways of self-care and coping to show my nervous system and my brain that, hey, food is always going to be there for you, my love. I'm not going to take it away from you. Because it doesn't work anyway, I just eat more of it in secret, in more shame. So let me add things in, practice feeling feelings like without taking away the food. That naturally, in my experience and that of my clients, takes food off this pedestal. And then you have a choice of like, you know what, I'm choosing to eat emotionally tonight, and I'm okay with that, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I just love that so much because it's so true. And it's not only true with food. I mean, it's true with all the things we shame ourselves for. And again, that's sort of another pattern. I don't think people are sitting around consciously going, I'm going to shame myself right now. Like if we were that conscious about it, we would all be working on it and it would be a different world that we live in. So
Yeah.
this is such an insidious pattern that I think a lot of people are not conscious of, but exactly that's the work is how do we make these patterns more aware and how do we I talk about this in the inner critic workshop I kind of developed because it's the same thing. We think we have to tell ourselves to get over our shit if we're just harder on ourselves or meaner to ourselves or, find that thing that we can do perfectly, which is also another myth, that suddenly we're just going to be fine. And like, we won't have all these problems anymore because we're just going to, whip our asses into shape, literally and
Especially if
figuratively.
you're thin. If you're
Right.
thin, you'll be then rich, you'll be happy, you'll have great sex, you'll get everything you want, your needs will automatically be met. No,
Exactly.
doesn't happen.
Exactly. So, I mean, the sooner we can realize that, a shame cycle does nothing but keep us stuck. It's just not like that. None of that is the answer. And it's really a really, really hard dynamic to unravel. And it's something that I realized this year, again, after with the book coming out and with the diagnosis and like being able now, to your point, like one of the first steps for me was being able to identify this pattern. Like,
Yes.
what am I doing? What am I thinking? What am I feeling in more real time? Which doesn't
Yeah.
always happen because sometimes my functional freeze becomes such that I'm no longer conscious, which is the point. I'm like kind of pretty much dissociated, and then I just do whatever I'm doing until that starts to calm down. But at least
Yeah.
I know now what it is and like why
Yeah.
it's happening. And yes, reparenting, my therapist is an IFS therapist, which is internal
Oh,
family systems. And so
yes.
it's all
Best.
about the parts of us, right? So like
Yeah.
the managers and the firefighters and all this stuff. We're joking last time I was there. I'm like, I'm gonna have multiple personalities in the closet pretty soon. Which one of me is responding? But I totally get it. And it's like those little parts of us, as much as we would like to believe it's not true, are still in there.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, true regardless. Nobody grows up. I mean, parents are human beings. None of us are perfect. Everybody has like issues and stuff. So, another reason why it's so important to talk about it. because normalizing these experiences, like nothing is perfect. We
Yeah.
all struggle with these things, but we're so reticent still as a society and a culture to talk about these things in terms of mental health, which is
Yeah.
why I like to have these conversations. And I know you do too, is
Yes.
because bringing shame into the light reduces its power over us. And when we realize we're all struggling in our own way with shame, there's something so oddly comforting about that.
There is. And then when our shame is met with love and understandings, and oh my God, me too, it kind of starts to heal by itself because when we meet anything with love, when we meet our shadow parts with love, that's the first step. And then, like you said, something important about so many parts of us within not having grown up, our development of self stops or is hindered when we've experienced trauma in a dysfunctional family. So it's our job to reparent those different parts of us and go back and allow that part of us to be matured. And we have to like start back from babyhood and kind of work our way back. And all through that process, be kind and gentle and loving and not beating yourself up because you use food for comfort again. It's okay. It will check, like the food will kind of naturally fall away when you do the deeper work with so much self-love and compassion, but you can't rush it. We want it to happen tomorrow, but it's not going to.
Dang it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm so glad you said that because it's so true. And yeah, I mean, I say this to my therapist all the time, especially there have been some challenges this year for me emotionally that really have been internal upheavals. And when I'm in that place, I'm like, I'm so fucking sick and tired of blah, 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 and I don't know what my younger child needs to hear and what the hell, whatever. And she's like, yes, you
Everyone
do.
just fuck off and let me be
Yeah,
fine already.
exactly. Exactly. And she's like, you actually do know, but like one of the things it takes a long time is to remember to do these things, which sounds strange, but anyone who gets it is just going to get it. Like when you're in the
Yeah.
throes of this, you've kind of a lot of things go out the window and like you forget a lot of stuff. And then again, as your systems come back online, you're like, oh, yeah. I mean, the thing we do have to like transform those energies. And it's
Yeah.
like
And
when
allow them to be felt.
yes, exactly. And it's like acknowledging that I'm stuck in this, shame is a very low, like this is my therapist loves to talk energetically. And like, I get it because you feel it, right? When you're stuck in a shame cycle, you feel crummy. And
Yep.
so it's like, how do we do want to get out of it as quickly as possible. And therein lies the rub because for some of us, the quicker things that we go to are those old patterns. And again, it's not about meeting that with more shame or lack
Yeah.
of understanding, but going, oh, yes, oh my gosh, I see what's happening here. And I'm going to
Mm.
breathe for a few minutes and, it's going to be okay and all of that. But it is
Yeah.
definitely a work in progress.
But you can only do that, like be with yourself and be like, oh, ouch, that hurts. Oh, sweetheart, this hurts so much when you're not in a chronic state of fight, flight, or freeze, which is why when we do these patterns, it almost feels unconscious and automatic because you're in a fight, flight, or freeze response. Your system is hijacked. You haven't got chance to access the frontal cortex. It's like if you were generally being chased by a tiger, you wouldn't be like, oh, looks like a nice rose. Let me just smell it. No, your brain doesn't give you that capacity. It's like run or freeze or fight, like whatever makes sense in the moment. You don't have access to that part of your brain that's like, it's okay, we'll just ground and breathe. But in hindsight, you can practice looking back, okay, what would I do different? And next time it happens, you've got that little bit more of awareness, a little bit more space between the reaction to choose to respond. But it just takes practice, reflection, and a shit ton of self-love.
Exactly. Just to say, exactly. Yes. Well, I don't want us to run out of time without touching a little bit on kind of this last idea, which we've actually been talking about the whole time, but I really want to call it out, which is all of this as self-care
Yeah.
because I think a lot of us, again, have, it's not an either or, but we have an idea that self-care is like getting a massage, which it is. It can be, certainly. And all of these wonderful things, getting a mani-pedi or whatever, is our jam. But I like to think of and talk about self-care as a two-way street because I think the part that a lot of people miss about self-care is the inside out work, which is
Well,
when we talk about healing patterns, when we talk about dysregulation, when we talk about self-love and self-compassion and healing shame and all of these things, that to me is self-care that is starting on the inside and working its way out of us to the benefit not only of ourselves, but to every relationship that we have. But that can also engender a lot of shame, especially in women. I mean, I
yeah.
am constantly talking to friends and family about this idea that self-care is selfish and that even putting ourselves on the bottom of our to-do list, I mean, because most people don't even get themselves on the list at all.
Yeah.
So, and especially as a new mom, from your perspective, can you talk a little bit about all of this and self-care and its importance?
Gosh, yes. Well, I reframe that self-care is selfish to self-care is self-full. And it needs to be self-full because again, your child is going to be looking at you and they're going to model your behavior. So obviously my daughter is dependent on me right now. I'm not going to be like, hey, you're just going to have to wait for your milk because I need to do 10 minutes of yoga. No. When she's older, I can have a conversation and say, look, sweetheart, it's really important that mummy has this time for herself. So therefore XYZ. But now she's dependent on me. So of course her needs come first in that way. But what self-care is for me now is setting boundaries and saying no to a lot of things that I have not got capacity for. Like you and I booked this call months ago because I just don't want my agenda full because I just don't have capacity for that. So I've gone from feeling like I've had like 10 yeses per month in me to do things to like one per month. And that's been hard for me because I'm a social butterfly and I like to interact and I like to do things and keep busy. I can't do that anymore. So for me, it looks like being like, what's really important? What's my priority? That's going to come first. I'm going to ask my husband to help me with my daughter, and I'm going to do that for me. So my non-negotiable doesn't matter when throughout the day, I am doing half an hour of yoga every day, unless my body says you don't want to today, and that's fine. So we just make it work somehow, and it's a non-negotiable for me. So even if she's upset and it's coming towards the end of the day, I'm like, I'm going to do my yoga now. I love you and have fun. I'll be back in like because she's got her needs taken care of. He's there for her. That's a non-negotiable for me. And so self-care in general, and people don't see this, people see it as like getting the hair done, the nails done, which yes, it can be and is. It's setting boundaries. That's a big one. I've already said that. Saying no, letting go of people pleasing. Um, what else does it look like? Going to bed early and taking care of your physical body, eating your vegetables, like nourishing yourself with pleasurable, that's important, pleasurable and nourishing foods, skincare, not to try and not get wrinkles, but just to take care of my skin, like whatever that looks like for the individual. But it's more, what else would I say about internally? Speaking up and asking for your needs to be met, like, hey, I need some help with this, or can you look after her while I do this? It's all that kind of stuff that women find really hard because we've been taught to be not be a human being, but be a human. How did my coach phrase this? A human giver of experiences to others.
Mm.
We tend to center everyone else in our experience and make sure they're okay. But what about us? And my coach said, I was listening to a training the other day. She said, say if you've got a man and a woman going on a date and they've not met each other before, the man will probably be thinking, oh, I wonder if I'll like her. And the woman will be thinking, oh, I wonder if he'll like me.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. And I really want to reiterate what you just said again about needs, because I
Yeah.
know that that was something that, well, is something I still struggle with. And I think so many people do.
Mm.
Like, okay, yeah, yeah, we have needs. Yeah, 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 blah, 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 and we kind of like whatever. But I mean, like, I would really like, especially as we're coming to the end of our time here today, to kind of settle into this thought about we are allowed to have needs. We
Yes,
have
how
needs.
crucial.
We have them.
We
So
do. Let's stop pretending we don't. We do.
we do, and we're allowed to express those things. We are allowed to have our needs met. We're allowed to say our needs aren't being met. I mean, this is a whole like episode on its own, but
Yeah.
it's just so, I mean, I just again see it and hear it all the time still, women struggling with this idea that it's okay to prioritize ourselves. And like you're saying, that looks different at different stages of life. Of course it does.
Yes. Yeah.
Excuse me. Kids have different needs at different ages. Jobs have different needs at different times. I mean, it's not like we're saying, that's going to look exactly the same all the time. But what can be the same all the time is that we have boundaries and we understand why. And we know when we need to say no and when we say yes and all of those things. It's just so important to building a healthier self. So again, we have healthier relationships with everybody in our lives, including our families.
Yeah. And it starts with ourselves. And can I have 5 minutes? Five. Yeah. Good. I can have 5 minutes
Okay.
because I want to really share this because it's our job as women, and this is really hard. I don't want to be sexist here, but a lot of women experience finding it hard to ask for their needs. It's our job to make our needs known. And that's hard because what I used to think is I only discovered this in the last couple of years that if I thought if I was just pretty and thin enough, I would automatically get all my needs met without me having to have uncomfortable conversations by saying, hey, I'm not receiving this and this is what I need. So please can you meet that need? Or if not, I will find the need somewhere else or I'll give it to myself if possible. So we as women, a traditional way of doing this is a man will say, are you okay? What's wrong? I'm fine. Are you okay? I'm fine. What's wrong? I'm fine. 5 times. And the woman isn't fine. It's obvious the woman's not fine. But at the end of the day, it's not the man's job to guess. It's for us to take responsibility and say, you know what, I'm not fine. I feel because of, and this is what I need. So it's really uncomfortable, but we need to do this because we're showing our daughters it's not okay to speak up for what we need and receive that because receiving is a big word as well. We find it hard to receive because it's like, well, if my relationship is transactional, which is what I've learned, I need to give you something in order to just receive something. And this is obviously a big conversation, Tracy, but it's such a big thing. And it's up to us to start first of all, admitting that you said we have needs. We do. And our needs are important. And sometimes in early motherhood, when I was fully breastfeeding and my husband couldn't take her, you know what it looked like for me, even if I couldn't get my needs met, was just saying out loud to myself and to my husband, I really have a need of this and it's not getting met. And I'm really sad about that. That was a lot better than inside struggling and being like, oh my God, I need this. And me just speaking it out loud and then grieving the fact that I can't meet that need right now. And that's okay too. It will come.
Oh, it's so amazing because I had a very similar experience recently over it was a different like the details were different, but it
Mm.
was like I said to somebody out loud and not my therapist. It was like I said to somebody, my feelings are so hurt about this thing that happened. And
Mm.
it literally felt revolutionary inside my body that
Yes.
I said this thing out loud to someone else who wasn't my therapist. And I love my therapist, and therapy has its place. But like, we have to also do this stuff in real life.
We do.
And I can just so relate to what you're saying because it was like there was no, in that moment, there was no like exact resolve about
Yeah.
what was happening. But just using my voice and being able to
Yes.
say this thing out loud like blew my mind. And
Yes. I mean,
that's a
that's
good first step.
yes, that's speaking your truth and not repressing yourself and suppressing, speaking it, even if it can't be resolved. Because a lot of people, oh, what's the point? Nothing will change. There's a fucking point. Share what you feel, share what you need. If it doesn't get resolved, at least you're going to feel like you had described, like you're being true to yourself and your needs matter because I've shared it out loud. That's so important.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's probably a good place to wrap
I
up this
do. And you know
amazing
what I think we
conversation.
should do, Tracy? I think if when we release this to our lovely listeners, if we ask our listeners what they would like us to speak more on, if we get their feedback, then I think if we then come to our next session with kind of questions or topics from our listeners, I think that would be really exciting and fun to do.
I think so too. I think that's a fabulous idea.
Oh, we're doing it then.
Yay!
Hey.
Okay.
Awesome. Oh, that's gone so fast, even with the technical glitch in between. Thank you for this conversation, Tracy. I'm sure it's going to be of value to so many
Th-
people.
Thank you, Victoria. I agree completely, and I know I'm at the top of that list. So thank you very
No,
much
you're
for your time.
welcome. Much love to you and to your listeners and to my listeners. And if, as I said, if you want to let me and Tracy know what you would like us to talk about, what topics or any specific questions you have, give it to us and then we'll create.
Yes, I love it. Okay, from your mouth to their ears.
There you go. Bye bye, loves.